This isn't just another podcast. It's a movement, a global wave of women from Nairobi to Nashville, Seoul to Sao Paulo, stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight. Women who are ready to be seen, to be heard, to be unmuted. I'm Anjuli Marshall, an award-winning ABC and NBC journalist and speaker, turned business strategist, coach, and mom. My mission? To amplify the voices of women who were never meant to stay silent. One woman, one voice, one story at a time. So go ahead, put on your comfy pants, grab a coffee, and maybe the remote. Are you ready to press the button? Unmuted starts right now.
Hello, and welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. I am your host, Anjuli Marshall, and this is where we amplify the stories of women who are rewriting the rules of success, women who refuse to stay silent, my kind of women who lead with wisdom, courage, and global perspective. Today's guest is changing education from the ground up. Dr. Kimberly Berens is the founder of Fit Learning. She's a scientist educator and the author of Blind Spots. Her science-based system powers thousands of students to learn faster and to learn better. Let's bring to the stage right now Dr. Kimberly Berens. Dr. Berens, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So I want to dive right in. You have been doing something very unique in your field of work. So you're changing education, but you're changing it as the founder of a company called Fit Learning. Tell me what that is and how that has actually been changing your community.
Yes. So I founded Fit Learning, God, I'm going to age myself, 27 years ago in 1998.
When you were 5.
What? But I will say I was quite young at that point. I had just started my doctoral training at the University of Nevada, where I was getting a doctoral degree in behavior science, which is a branch of the science of learning. And so when I had started my career in undergrad, and then actually a little bit after undergrad, I delayed going to graduate school. I was getting experience in the field. And I was working in the area of autism and severe disabilities. And that is kind of where I started working in learning science, was applying that science to accelerate really adaptive skills, life skills, language skills with pretty disabled adults at first and then kids. And that work is life-changing, right? It makes you really understand how, regardless of a diagnosis a child may have received, when you understand how learning works at the level of process, scientific process, you can design instruction to accelerate learning with any type of learner and dramatically improve their quality of life. So that's what I started doing when I was quite young. And so then when I went to UNR, I started becoming kind of like confused about why our field was really only being seen or being implemented in that context. So how the science of learning was kind of nowhere to be found in traditional teacher training programs in the College of Education. And it was nowhere to be found in mainstream classrooms. It was really nowhere to be found in mainstream education. It was really only being used in special education, or again, in more kind of intensive treatment programs for children with more severe disabilities. And so that confused me because, the science of learning applies to everyone and everything and learning anything. And so luckily there was a couple other graduate students that I had met when I first got to the program that were interested in this as well. And so we started an after school math program. There's so many things I could say about that, but we were working with just kids on the university campus. We were working with faculty's kids and applying the science and then doing science in our application of it, evolving the method through the scientific process. And the long story short is we produced something pretty remarkable. And so then, long story short, we ended up privatizing, my husband and I ended up privatizing the program off campus in 2003. And then long story short, now here we are and it's, 2025 and we have, 30 locations around the world. And I just launched I had just launched our online division a year ago, so that, trying to scale the efforts to reach kids who don't live near a physical location, because during COVID, we were able to refine and evolve our online model that we've been providing since 2013. But when you had to do it, as an organizational overhaul for a period of months, and as scientists, we got really good at that. So now, our online model produces the same outcomes as our live model. And so that's kind of where we are. And so I think the long story short of how are we transforming our communities is that, we are a values driven company. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, it's not just a pipe, a lot of companies say that, right?
Sure they do.
That's kind of like a buzz thing in corporate world. But we really are that, in the sense that, we see science as the crowning achievement of humanity. And when you think about all the areas of our civilization where massive advancements have been made because of science, when you think in the field of medicine, the types of diseases that are being treated now, people aren't dying from cancer at the rate they used to be, lifespans have increased, all those things. Think about engineering, think about, agriculture, all the advancements that have been made. Unfortunately, those same advancements have not been made in the education system. So today in 2025, we still have about 70% of students in the United States below proficiency in all academic subjects. And if you pull out low income kids, that statistic increases to close to 90%.
Goodness.
And so what happens, what's happening in schools, unfortunately, doesn't work because it's not driven by the science behind the learning process. And the reason for that is because it didn't exist when our public school system was founded. At the turn of the 20th century, the science of learning hadn't started evolving yet. That didn't happen until the 1930s. And so our education system was really founded on a belief system, kind of a belief about how kids should learn and how teachers should teach. Yeah. And that ideology, right, has remained really the entrenched kind of framework from which teachers are trained and schools are designed. And it hasn't evolved to include what we know now after decades and decades and decades and decades of science behind how learning happens. Mm-hmm. It hasn't changed. And so that, unfortunately, so many kids are failed because of ineffective instruction, and that defines their entire life. Their entire lives are defined by those limitations that have nothing to do with who they are as human beings, has nothing to do with their innate ability or their genes, or their IQ. It has everything to do with the fact that they're not receiving effective instruction. So do you
find then that the big ship that you're steering is educating not just students, but also teachers, educators, and parents?
We're trying, well, definitely parents and obviously kids. I mean, so we really, I tried to go in the front door of schools from the beginning. So I ran my dissertation, which was I did a piece of research in the school system in Washoe County, Nevada. Okay. And it was a teacher training study. And so I was really evaluating how to rapidly and effectively train teachers to implement a kind of a simplified model of instruction based on our science in classrooms. And obviously that was profoundly effective and the outcomes were clear, but there was no buy-in and no support from the administration after the dissertation was done. Oh. And it made me really sad. And so, it was so interesting trying to, what I really discovered was that, unfortunately, in education, it's not about outcomes, which is really crazy. It's about, what teachers are doing, does that match what the school believes they should be doing, rather than what teachers are doing, is that producing a measurable outcome with students? That there's a complete disconnect there.
So who determines what is the goal for students and educators?
That is the $1 million question.
Oh my goodness.
I know. There's really, I have to say, they talk about state standards. And so when we talk about standards in a science or standards in a profession that's driven by a scientific community, we have standards of practice, right? So standards of practice for us mean what we're doing. We are implementing evidence-based methods and procedures that have evidence behind them and have been identified by a group of of scientists that guide the profession, right? Like, for instance, doctors, let's just say,
Sure.
medical doctors, like they're adhering to the standards of practice that have been empirically or scientifically identified as best practice for medicine.
Okay.
And if they're not in that, and those practices also result in a consistently produced outcome, meaning they successfully treated patients and those patients have gotten better, right?
Sure.
And so that's what standards of practice are in most professional fields, but that's actually not the case in teaching. Whereas standards of practice are completely disconnected from outcome. So for instance, a teacher's certification or license has no relationship between the outcomes she produces with students or he produces with students in the classroom. It has to do with, is what she's doing match what the establishment thinks she should be doing, rather than is what she's doing producing a 90% literacy rate with the kids at the end of her school year, right? Which is what it should be. I mean, that's how it is in my organization. Like we have a formal certification in our method of instruction, and all of the people that train and eventually become certified to work for us, that they meet those measurable standards of proficiency in that method. And those measurable standards of proficiency are linked to outcomes with learners.
Got it.
So standards in education, or when you hear about state standards, that has nothing to do with outcome. That has to do with content. So it's like, what are teachers expected to teach this year? Mm-hmm. That's what a standard is, but it's not that, what is the outcome that teacher's produced this year, which is really the problem.
That is really the problem. And this is public schools we're talking about mostly, correct?
I mean, I will say it's agnostic in terms of where it's being provided. So I again, the education system at large would really encompass public ed, but the same issue happens in private schools and charter schools and in, parochial schools. Because the tradition in education has never been a scientific tradition. It's an ideological tradition. It's similar to politics in that way.
Yes, it sounds like politics.
It very much so, unfortunately. So you get into these ideological debates that you can't win because, again, there's no connection to outcome. It's opinion based.
So then,
mm-hmm.
That's frustrating. So then when it comes to, I can only imagine what you have dealt with, because this is your work. This is your life's work, for lack of better words. And so how do you move forward? What do you do to ensure that educators and obviously students are able to still receive what they need? I mean, how do you push your message if ears are being la 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 la? What do you do?
Well, I mean, again, so when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go in the front doors of schools because they were so resistant, because when you have ideological dogmatism, and I know that sounds kind of like a fancy, crazy word, term, but what I mean by ideological dogmatism, which is very, very dangerous in any situation, but ideological dogmatism meaning you fanatically adhere to a belief system regardless of evidence. And that should sound kind of familiar with respect to a lot of other stuff that's going on in our country now, which is very scary. And the failure of our education system is not unrelated to the rise of that type of thinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, when you have ideological dogmatism where you fanatically adhere to a belief system regardless of evidence that it's ineffective, then it's very difficult to shift that because people take it personally. I mean, it is, their belief system somehow gets equated with who they are as human beings. And so rather than what happens in science, like, because I'm trained as a scientist, like I'm not trained by the College of Education. I'm trained by a field of, like, I was trained in a field of science. And so the exact opposite happens in a field of science where dogmatism is really like, no way, we are not dogmatic at all, because what we do is we evaluate evidence with respect to our goal, whatever our goal may be. I mean, not every scientist has the same goal of what problem they're trying to solve, but whatever problem you're trying to solve, that's your goal. Are you closer to solving it? And then you evaluate the evidence. And then that's why science continually changes and improves and evolves, is because we're always we're trying to find the we're trying to see, where are we making mistakes? Yeah. Where are we not good enough? What have we not thought about? How have we not?
You're doing that through data.
Through data. and evidence. And so when you don't have that, when all based on this belief system, then there's nothing that is going to convince them to change, because they're not actually linked to, they're not goal oriented. Their goal, actually, they are goal oriented in the most dangerous way, and their goal is being right.
Goodness.
Right? It's like proving themselves right all day long, rather than evaluating objectively, is the way I'm teaching working to produce a measurable level of proficiency with these kids in my class. So and teachers aren't trained to think like scientists. So how am I trying to do this? So my point of this long-winded thing, was I started a private organization because I had no choice. The only way I could start providing science-driven instruction to kids was doing it in my own business. And so I started marketing to parents. And by the way, when you use science, like, we produce at least a year's gain, one grade level, at least, in a 40-hour training period. So I want you to think about that.
Okay.
Science gives you. So when you're using science-driven instruction, or especially, we are the best. So Fit Learning, we produce better outcomes than any other organization because, again, of our fanatical adherence to science, not ideology, but science. When you use that, you're able to produce miracles. Like, parents think it's miraculous. It's not. It's not a miracle. It's science. But sometimes science is masked as a miracle. It looks like a miracle, right? So when you're moving a kid a grade level in a 40-hour enrollment, that's a work week. Think about that. Like, we all work about a standard 40-hour work week. Think about that. In a 40-hour work week, a kid is moving a year in math, reading, critical thinking, writing, whatever we might be targeting, right? So produce outcomes that are that amazingly transformative, then it's like wildfire. So, I didn't market this business until really recently, the last 4 or 5 years. We actually had a marketing budget and started spending money on marketing. We never did it because it was all word of mouth, because we do what we say we're going to do, right? Yeah. You don't have to market it when you do what you say. Your parents do it for you. But now what we've done over the last, I would say we've been doing science on it for the last about 5 years. We have a school model now that is it's called Fit Light, because it's a streamlined, kind of more simplified version of our method that schools can implement, right? Because what we do in our private organization, we're trying to move kids 2, 3, 4, 5 years like that, because they're so behind. Yeah. When you're talking, but we're at a different level than we could ever get a classroom teacher to get to, because of all the other stuff she has to do. But so we have a streamlined version of our model that now we have several research studies that have come out about, and we have school contracts happening around the country now, because finally, we've garnered enough attention with our private model. We put out enough publications. I've written my book. Parents have gotten noisy about it, because parents are like, I was told by your school that my child would never read because they are dyslexic. And then I take my kid to Fit Learning and they're reading at the 90th percentile in 80 hours. So what's the story here, right? So parents got angry. Like, some parents got angry. Right, which is the only answer. So I have to tell you, it's noisy parents and also noisy educators, because there's a lot of educators that 100% get this. Like, they know their training is inadequate. They know that there's evidence-based methods out there that they're not being trained to use, or they're not even allowed to use. That. And so they're noisy. So when educators get noisy and when parents get noisy, that's when school administrators actually realize that it's time to do something. And then, so we've been more successful over the last few years in getting into schools. I have an awesome contract in the Bronx with a really low income high school of kids who are functionally illiterate at sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school, and they still can't read. So we do high impact and intense literacy intervention with those kids, and that contract got renewed again, and we're working with them again this year. And it's amazing because these kids have a chance.
They have a chance.
You're
providing a chance. You're giving kids a chance.
Like, no one understands. If you had never worked with a kid who is functionally illiterate at an older age, know what you cannot, or dysnumerate, like someone who is so behind in mathematics or literally cannot read, you have no idea what that does to a child, that does to a teenager. That is a defining characteristic of a human being.
Yeah.
And it will follow them for the rest of their life. And that limitation, which is then made to be as if it's their personal limitation, as if there's something wrong with their DNA or something wrong with their intellectual ability or something wrong with them, rather than what the real cause is, which is absolutely profoundly ineffective instruction across the board, that this kid has never received effective instruction their entire school life.
Goodness.
And it's not their fault, but they're made to believe it is. So they carry around shame. They carry, and then they also are you know, a lot of these kids we're working with in schools, we intentionally go after at-risk schools because we're, you know, in our private program, it's parents who can afford to pay.
Yeah.
I mean, we do outreach services for kids who can't afford to pay all the time. We always have an enrollment of outreach kids, but most of our private paid kids are parents that can afford it. So what we care about with the school model is going after these at-risk schools, these low-income kids who've never been given a chance, because they deserve a chance.
And you are giving them a chance. Thank you so
We just
much.
need more schools to let us in the door.
And that's the goal. So tell people at home, before we go, tell them at home how they can get in touch with you, how they can invest in your program and invest in their kids and in their community.
So we have, you know, multiple options. You can go to fitlearning.com. And so fitlearning.com is our main website. And on that website, you'll learn all about our, you know, our model of instruction. You'll see all the locations we have around the United States. Then we also have international locations. And then you get, you know, if there's a location near you and you're interested in enrolling your child, you can reach out to that specific location that's in your area. And it's awesome. Our website like shows you geographically which locations are closest to where you live.
Okay.
And then if you don't live near a location, you'll also see on that website Fit Learning Online, which is now I'm the CEO of that division. So if you click on Fit Learning Online, then you'll come to that website. You can also go to fitlearningonline.com standalone if you are just interested in that. And then you can enroll that way, and you can live anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's profoundly effective, and it can happen while you're making dinner and your kid is becoming unbelievably proficient at reading and mathematics and critical thinking and writing and all those things. You know, there's no homework, there's no parent having to sit there and do our job for it. Like, you know, how many parents have to teach their kids academic concepts at night because they don't learn them during the day? That never happens. We do our job, and you don't have to do it. So you can do all your other jobs.
That's so
we
great.
Do our job, so you can do your job. So that's a way.
Okay.
And that's for kind of private parents who want to just privately enroll their kids.
Okay.
If you are an organization, a school, then on the website, on the Fit Learning website, you'll see links. We do something called a scientist educator training series. So that's for we have a lot of private schools who do that with us. There are speech path organizations, speech pathology organizations that do that with us. There are autism agencies, you know, different kinds of professionals who want to actually bring the science of learning into their practice.
Yeah.
They learn those skills through our scientist educator series. And then there's also our Fit Light program, which you'll see on there. And that's for schools.
Okay.
So school, you know, teachers, administrators, parents who want to bring this into their school, you can find out information on that, and there's links for you to contact and have, you know, meet with someone about those programs. So
is there an email that someone can reach out to you if this strikes?
There's oh yeah. So there's contact forms all over the Fit Learning website. But to reach me personally, you can go to my website. So drkimberlyberens.com. So that's my own personal website with just my professional work. So drkimberlyberens.com is where they'll find my book, which I highly recommend everyone read. Not just because I'm proud of that book, it's a great book, but it's also an unbelievable resource to understand what the science of learning is. And when people read my book, they're like, how is this not how school goes? Like, it's like, duh. I mean, is it science? Yes, but it's also common sense.
It's common sense.
So parents can't believe it when they read my book. They're like, how in the heck is this not how my kids being instructed on a daily basis and how schools are designed? But anyway, so you can read my book, links are on there. And then I've done a bunch of these podcasts. I've done a bunch of media. And then there's a link to send me an email on my website, drkimberlyberens.com.
Dr. Kimberly Berens, thank you for the work that you do.
Well, thank you for having me. And thank you for the work you're doing, giving people a voice.
Yeah.
Because I will say a lot of the big tutoring conglomerates out there that I've been, buried by over the years, they are not, you be careful. Those big, flashy traditional tutoring companies, they do all the same stuff that doesn't work in the classroom, but they have $1 million marketing budgets, they have $1 million advertising budgets, but they don't have to actually do what they say they're going to do.
They're too big.
So the fact when I go, that's why I do as many podcasts as I can, because we're not like that. Like, we spend a lot of money on our service. We spend a lot of money on our training. We spend a lot of money on the quality of the service we provide. So we can't compete with like Sylvan and all those places that, I don't know.
Listen, you're doing what you're supposed to do,
right?
And that is competition. And I'm so grateful for you. If anyone at home is watching this podcast and feeling inspired, please share this message with someone that you know, someone that you love, someone that you know can use this message, and contact Dr. Berens ASAP, because the program works.
It sure does.
Sure, you have to work it.
We have a 27-year track record on the program working. Our data are publicly available, our outcome data. So yes.
Dr. Berens, thank you for being here.
You so much.
We're so honored to have you. And you're officially part of the Unmuted family, so welcome.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
And thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time on Unmuted. Bye for now.
What you just heard wasn't just a story. It was a spark, a glimpse into the heart of a woman living her purpose, and a reminder that when one woman shares, another woman wakes up to what's possible. These aren't just conversations, they're catalysts. I'm your host, Anjali Marshall, and this is the Unmuted Podcast, where voices rise, stories connect, and purpose finds its volume. Until next time, friends, stay unmuted.